Okay, so any questions this morning? Jasmine, you have any questions?
I always have questions. You know, but I'm just really happy. Seriously, I'm just happy to be here, and spoke really highly of it. And I have some sisters and brothers that logged on, so I'm just excited to be here.
Good, 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 good. I see your friend right there sitting next to you. Look like she's a little apprehensive girlfriend. I've been there, you know. Yeah, I can tell what type of place you're in, but I was so bad that I relegated myself to staying in one of those places for 2 years before I would even leave captivity. That's how scared I was of leaving out of there by myself. So that's for the record, you know, in case you're thinking that you might be in the wrong place, you're in the right place. You just don't know it yet. So just keep your faith and hope, okay?
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, that was just some words of encouragement. I was a bad boy for real. I'm on level 67 of life, so it's lucky that I'm even here to even give you any words of wisdoms. You know, whatever you do, don't go, stay. You know, if somebody tells you that you need to leave, then you know that you're trapped in a room with a lunatic. You know what I'm saying? You know, because, you know, so yeah. Does anybody really, can they really tell me why they chose emotional sobriety as this book study? What made you want to come and seek emotional sobriety? Anybody brave enough to answer that question?
I will.
Okay.
For me, I've been clean and sober since September 5th, 2014. But for me, I don't really know what the book's about yet. I haven't got to read it yet, but I kind of figured that if Jasmine was showing me the light, that I should just go. And also because I think a lot of triggers are still there that were there when I was using, and I haven't really learned how to turn them off yet.
Wow. What are your triggers?
Men mostly, honestly.
Wow, that's a heavy subject. Men.
Yeah.
And then it would be the opposite for men. They would say women.
Yeah, I get
right?
that. Yeah.
Right. So how many came here to get their emotional life straight or their love life straight?
That's me too. Check and check.
Really? Wow. Wow, that's deep. Do you guys know how, do you know how far back that goes in our makeup?
I saw Karen, she said way back.
And you're correct. You know, Karen, you must have some professional training because you're answering all the right questions with the right answers, you know. Is anybody here familiar with
long-term sobriety?
Okay, that makes sense. You've been in a fight for a long time, right? This is deeper than we've even come to even think about, you guys, when it comes down to emotions and sobriety. When we're on page 4, right?
Okay. Yeah, we left off on page 4.
So it says, it's at the starting paragraph of this, it says it takes 2 to become 1. We learn the skills of self, or what we call limbic regulation, from those who surround us when we are young. As children, if we get frightened or hurt, for example, we look to our mothers and fathers and caregivers to help us to feel better, to soothe us and to woo us back into balance. But what they're not talking about in this is the simple fact that we needed healthy parents in order to help regulate us. And because we didn't have the healthy parents that we needed, and it's not because of the parents' fault, it's because of the environment that we grew up in. Does that make sense to anybody? It's called the 3 realms of ACEs. Now, didn't we send that out about a few weeks ago, Melissa?
Yeah, that was one of the ones that we posted. But I know since a lot of these folks are new to the Facebook group, they might not have seen it yet. Do you want to share what those 3 realms are?
I'm looking for my infograph and I don't have it in front of me. I know it's environment, household, and community, but I forget exactly the subgroups of that. Do you remember what those were?
I can't pull it up while I'm recording,
Right.
but I think even just broadly, like, so folks are aware the 3 realms of ACEs are the adverse childhood experiences, adverse community environments, and then what was the third one, Alfred?
It's community, household. Oh God.
It's early for us too, y'all.
Community, environment, and
And household.
personal worlds are
Yeah.
ACE scores, and so what they say that ACEs are surprisingly common. 64% of the 17,000 in the ACE study had one of the 10 ACEs. 12% had 4 or more. I'm in the 12% group. As a matter of fact, I'm just one shy of 10 for my ACE score.
Is everyone familiar with the ACE study or the ACE questionnaire? Can you share a little bit about that, Alfred?
Okay, so the ACEs are just ACE study, 5 important findings. ACEs are just one part of ACEs science. The 5 parts of ACEs science. Number 1 is the ACE study and the ACE surveys. That's the epidemiology of this. And then number 2 is how toxic stress from ACEs damage children's brains. That's our neurobiology. How toxic stress from ACEs affects our short-term and long-term health. How we pass ACEs from parent to child through our genes, and that's called epigenetics, Karen. And how resilience research shows our brains are plastic and our bodies can heal. We're not doomed. Our brains are plastics. Our bodies want to heal. To reduce stress hormones in our bodies and brains, we can meditate, exercise, sleep, and eat well, have safe relationships, live and work in safety, and ask for help when we need it. Here's something that's really important to you guys, and hopefully, Melissa, can you put that up in the chat, the 3 realms of ACEs, because this is very important, because we need to really hear this, that we're not doomed, that our brains are plastics, our bodies want to heal, to reduce stress hormones in our bodies and brains. And the reason why I want to really go back over that again about the stress hormones, because in actuality, you guys, we don't have a problem with our emotional sobriety. We have a problem with the secretion of our stress hormones. And the problem with our stress hormones is the fact is that it's not in our brain that we're thinking about this stuff. It's in our physiology. So when our bodies are compromised, by fear, then our bodies switch to a different level. Does that make sense to you guys? Are you guys familiar with fight or flight? Okay. So what happens during fight or flight, adrenaline and cortisol gets secreted into our bodies, and that's what's impacting our physiology. Our physiology is so bad so that we're actually on tilt. When we start worrying about our emotional sobriety, it's actually our homeostasis is out of balance. Our body is out of balance. Our body is called an organism, and it's out of balance. And that's what's going on. We have a problem with our nervous system. We don't have a problem with our psychology. The problem is with our nervous system. It's the secretion of the hormones that has us in balance. Does that make sense to anybody? So cortisol and adrenaline is like speed, you guys. And so you guys say, yeah, I knew that would get a smile out of you, Jasmine, right? You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's bad news. You know, what might seem like it feels good, it's just damaging our bodies, you guys. And so that's what happens when we're in the wombs of our mothers and they live in stressful environments, like the 3 realms of ACEs where you can look at it. So you're having problems with your food, your money, your living environment. It's impacting your whole body. And so when it impacts your whole body like that, in actuality, it sets us up for the chronic illnesses. And so that's the reason why it says that that to reduce stress hormones in our bodies and brains, we can meditate, exercise, sleep, and eat well, and have safe relationships, live and work in safety, and ask for help when we need it. That's really what you need to be focused on all the time. And in order for you to go back and and look at some of the wounds, you're going to, first of all, have to forgive your parents. Your parents didn't have nothing to do with it. When you look at this, and you look at this on a big scale, you really see that it was actually the 3 realms of aces that caused us to be like this, and then also the generational stuff that happened to us. So when you look at it, and I want to use, in Resma's book, he uses white body supremacy, but in Alfred's book, I call it white body culture. And so minorities, especially minorities, they've never really had their culture recognized. And then when you look in the 3 realms of aces, you see that our culture was oppressed. And so the white body culture is the dominant culture. So it's all those policies and procedures that provoke but actually systemic racism. Because we're not getting equal food, we're not getting equal shelter, and we're not getting equal income. And without all those 3 things, I don't care who you are, you're not going to be able to raise your offspring good. Anybody in here have pets? Nope. Anybody have pets? Yeah. And so the reason why a lot of us don't want to have pets is because we don't think that we can appropriately care for the pets. Am I right or wrong? All dogs, they look cute, cats look cute, and you want them, but then you say, am I stable enough to be able to manage this cat or this dog? And then that really goes to show you actuality, what you need to do in your own personal lives. So as we look at this and we talk about it takes 2 to become 1, you're not going to be able to do this by yourselves. It says we can build resilient families. Educating parents about their own ACEs helps them understand their lives and motivates them to become healthy parents to prevent passing their ACEs on to their kids. So when it comes down to the mothers and fathers in the room, it would bear to behoove to you that in actuality, that we should be educating not only our parents, but our children too. And we need to work on what is secure attachment and what is insecure attachment. We need to work on what is attunement. These are some of the reasons why that we can't have relationships or don't have healthy relationships with other men and women. It's because we really never learned how to have an appropriate relationship with ourselves because we didn't have the self-regulation we needed from our parents because they was always underneath the ebb and flow of economics. And then systemic and structural racism. And how can they go home and raise their families when they have minimum wages? Does that make sense? Here's another one. It says, for resilient families, we need healthy organizations, healthy systems, and healthy communities. If an organization is not trauma-informed care, then I would suggest looking for another organization to provide services for me in the community. Because trauma-informed care operates from 6 guiding principles. And the first one is safety. Second one is trustworthiness and transparency. Third is peer support. 4 is collaboration and mutuality. 5th is empowerment, voice, and choice. And 6 is cultural, historical, and gender issues. If they're not looking through those particular lenses, it might not be a healthy place for you to be at because they're not recognizing your culture, your historical, and your gender issues when it has to come down to fighting against this white body culture. It's the same thing as the same thing, and I'm going to use this analogy as when they gave the Native Americans blankets with the smallpox, and it's the same thing with the white body culture, with the curriculum that you go in. And why does everybody have to send you to a treatment center? Why would I need treatment? Had you gave me the right information in the beginning, I wouldn't need treatment, right? Or if you gave me all the correct information in the beginning, I wouldn't be leaning out of my window looking for what's next. You know what I mean? I know that you would have my back, so the safety is not there, the trustworthiness and the transparency is not there. Then who's the peer support? We don't even have the right peer supports because a lot of our people that look like kinfolk are actually just skin folk because they're part of the problem too, because they're representing a white body culture and trying to let you know that it's okay. You know, and it's not that it's just the white body culture, but it's the act of omission and an act of commission. So we know certain things about certain stuff, but we don't know the rest about other things. And so they leave us in, I almost want to say they leave us in disguise, but they really don't tell the truth, and they got us behind a curtain. It's almost like the Wizard of Oz. They're working all the buttons and stuff behind the curtain and making it all right for their lives. But if you look around, everybody that looks like us are all in the same shape. So what should that tell us? So when we talk about emotional sobriety, remember that it has to happen in all aspects of our life. And so if you feel fear in your life, then what happens is the perception of threat takes over in your life. And the perception of threat is unconscious. You're not even aware that this happens in emotional sobriety. So they make emotional sobriety seem like it's a topical thing, but it's actually deeper than that. It goes down into your core, into your autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is what controls your central nervous system and controls your parasympathetic and your sympathetic. The parasympathetic is rest and digest, and then the sympathetic is fight or flight. Does that make sense to anybody here? You see, I see people shaking their heads. And then it says many people, organizations, communities are integrated trauma-informed and resilient building practices based on ACEs science, including pediatricians, schools, juvenile detention facilities, businesses, social services, and people in the faith-based communities. And for examples, you can go to acestoohigh.com/aces-101. That's just a resource for you guys, you know, in case that you want to get deeper involved in the learning about your nervous system, because in actuality, you guys, our problems is not with anxiety and depression. It's deeper than that. It's in our physiology. Our physiology turns that on. Our cognition doesn't turn that on. Our bodies were created to be able to protect us longer. We're not aware to those sensations in our bodies because we've been domesticated by the dream of the planet. And the dream of the planet is all these buildings making it look like it's safe and stuff, but in actuality, we're not safe. Am I right or wrong? So when we're looking at chapter 1 of emotional sobriety, it takes two to become one. First of all, I'm going to tell you guys that you guys need to group up and join together as peers in order to be stronger and start some small study groups with your peers. Jasmine, you got a bunch of people that you're connected with. Start your study groups. Philip, I see you down there in New Mexico, mind, you know, and it look like you're doing all right, man. Look like you might be a counselor to somebody. You got an office, you know, and so, you know, start a small support group, because birds of a feather flock together. Eagles fly with eagles. You don't ever see no pigeons flying with eagles, do you? Right? Because they would end up being a mark, right? What are you doing up this high, man? We're going to have you, you know, and so that's what they've been doing to us, you know what I mean? And so they know all the rules of it. They created a game, and look at us. So we can't blame them, you know, the white body culture. When I say white body culture, you can't blame all Europeans for this, because there's a lot of immigrants who are still of European descent that are having the same problems that we are. When you're on the bottom, it's hard to get to the top, especially when everybody don't know where the top is at. And so when you're looking at this book, and I'm asking you to read about emotional sobriety, it says, the second paragraph said, children are dependent on their parents for nothing less than survival. Because of this, what goes on in those primary relationships affects us on a deep level, at that survival level. Who am I in a relationship to you? Do I please you? Am I safe in your arms? Do I have a place in the world? Will I be fed, understood, and cared for? And these kinds of fundamental issues are part of early life. So if you're not getting that information in the beginning, how are you going to self-regulate yourself? And so that's what happens when our parents haven't taught us how to self-regulate ourselves. then we let the external world self-regulate ourselves. And that's the reason why we end up out here in these different ends of this teeter-totter. Because we really don't know how to calm ourselves down. Self-regulation and co-regulation is working along with your body. That means listening to your sensations in your body. That's the reason why they got that book out. It says The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. I think I got it here somewhere. But there's all kinds of resources out here for us to work on, you guys, so we can understand it. It's our hormones that's causing us the problem. It's our vagus nerve. It's our lack of knowing what our internal locus of control looks like. You know, if they keep you in the mirror buying makeup, if they keep you in the mirror buying makeup, then how are you going to focus on what's really going on? Our problems are not external, our problems are internal. And so when we talk about emotional sobriety, it goes on to say, here's an example. We're on the spot again, but this time we're being blamed for something, and we can't figure out what we did wrong. What we did the same thing yesterday and no one got mad. Our parents is yelling at us. They look out of control with arms flying around and eyes filled with fury. And it's as if another person is taking over that body, and that person is scary. So how many of you guys really have been traumatized by your upbringing? Has anybody been traumatized, or traumatization was normal in the household? That's the way it was in my household. Traumatization was normal, you know, and it's hard to talk about emotional sobriety in a lot of different societal norms because it makes us feel personal that somebody was attacking us, and then we think that our homes was normal, but in actuality they weren't normal. Anybody got any questions? Philip, did you have a question? No? What about Karen or Kelby? No? Has anybody did any homework out of chapter 1?
This is Kelby. I've done some supplementary study, not so much just chapter 1, but moving through the book. I took interest in kind of the polyvagal theory, and you spoke about the vagus nerve and the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Because of my background and my exposure with ACEs, I think some of my form of control, if you want to call it, is to gain knowledge and insight so that when I see triggers or when I see things, whether it's within myself or with helping others, I'm more informed. And so I would say that my expanded study has been more on that polyvagal theory.
Yeah, I've been focused on that research also too, and that's because of my health. Because I don't know if a lot of you guys don't know it, but I have liver cancer, fibromyalgia, IBS, chronic fatigue, and that's what I fight daily, you guys. And this is after my addiction. You know, you guys, this is after, you know, me spending 38 years smoking crack and ingesting heroin, you know, simultaneously, sometimes intravenously, you know, and then after, in 2004, I swallowed a quarter ounce of crack cocaine and died and was paralyzed. And they asked me, why did you do that? I wasn't thinking. It's actually where your sympathetic takes over. And it just had me, I was in fight or flight. And I just reacted. And so what happens is when your brain is on trauma or adversity, Kelby, the prefrontal cortex is underactive, and that's our thinking center. Our cingulate, our self-regulation center, is underreactive. Our insula, or interoception center, is dysregulated. And our fear center, the amygdala, is overactive. So with all these things offline, because in actuality, all 5 of these things need to work in union, to be connected in union in order for us to have any type of healthy thinking for emotional sobriety. So if all these 5 areas are not connected, you guys, guess what? We're not going to even have any type of emotional sobriety. We're not going to have any kind of sobriety. We're not going to have any type of self-regulation. We're not going to have our homeostasis, which is to be in balance. And when our disease gets us, and then to understand our polyvagal, another thing about the polyvagal that I don't think I even mentioned was the fact that nutrition plays a huge role in your polyvagal. And the reason why it plays such a huge role in our polyvagal is for the simple fact is that it's our messenger system. It's the information highway, Jasmine. That's what I keep trying to tell you. It sends 80% information from our bodies to our brain, and our brain only sends 20% information back down. And then if you're not eating healthy food, you guys, I really want you to listen to me on this, you guys. If you guys are not eating healthy foods, organic foods, there's going to be a problem. And the reason why, one of them is mainly because we're not getting the minerals in our body that we should be. We should be getting 70 minerals a day in our diets. And guess what? We're lucky to get 12. And that's how information is transmitted from your body to all the other cells in your body. We're made up of cells, you guys, and we have genetics, but guess what? Our genetics are not even connected. We think our genetics are etched in stone, but they're not etched in stone. In actuality, our genes can be impacted by our environments. And when they impact our environment, and they impact our immune system. When they impact our immune system, they impact our gut. When they impact our gut, they impact our gut flora. So that's the reason why so many people are having autoimmune diseases, because the infections and the toxins that's inside of our body. And so when we're not eating enough food and getting all the right minerals, our body can't communicate to the various different parts of our bodies. Does this make sense to anybody? I don't want you guys just to be nodding your head, but there's so much content in this chapter, in this first chapter, when we get to talking about our parents and attachment. And so if you guys like, and I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm a therapist too, and I focus on the bottoms up approach. And the bottoms up approach is, you guys, is that we focus first on the amygdala, the fear center. We actually start plugging in and learning about the sensations in our body so we can watch our triggers, and we call those antecedents. These are things that happen before, prior to an incident. So what are your antecedents, or what are your triggers before you have an emotional outbreak? And when I say emotional outbreak, is when you get angry or upset. In actuality, I got another infographic that's called the window of tolerance, and I think that's something that we need to stick up on the board. Melissa, do you have the window of tolerance infographic? Yeah.
Yep, I'll pull it right now and drop it in the chat.
Okay.
Can you speak a little bit, you mentioned the polyvagal theory, and I know that for folks that are new to the group today might not be familiar with that. Can you just expand on what polyvagal theory kind of is and what the vagus nerve is a little bit?
So you caught me off guard there.
Sorry about that.
Right.
Going back.
So that's underneath somatic experiencing, you guys, and that's body, brains, and mind. And so that's the new terminology now, you guys. It's not the old-fashioned CBT and treatment centers of that nature. It's those who have experienced trauma and adversity in their lives, actuality, need to start looking at it from a somatic experiencing level. And so it talks about the stress cycle. So when you feel safe and social, we're actually in our ventral vagus state, and that means we're engaged. I'm at home. Another one is that our neural section detects threats, and that's the tiger. And our ventral vagal system, engaging the ventral vagus, you guys, if you want to increase your score with your ventral vagus system, singing, humming, chanting, dancing, gargling, rocking, swinging, tapping. Another thing that you can do with your ventral vagus system is that, let me see if I got this right in the top of my head, you guys. So the ventral vagus system is the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, but the ventral vagal system is the part of the brain that, oh God, I'm stuck on this one. I can't think of it right now. Kelby, can you help me out?
Yeah, I'll try my best. So, kind of which part of it would you like me to expand on?
Well, I'm actually going to go get my chart right now from Deb Dana. Are you familiar with that? Do you have the polyvagal chart?
Yeah, I don't have the polyvagal chart, but I do know what you're speaking of. And in fact, that was something that I have just been looking at in my expanded studies.
So here
go ahead.
Here we go. I got it right here. So I'll share it with everybody.
You're on it.
Okay. So what is the polyvagal theory? It's a theory of the ways the autonomic nervous system works. The polyvagal theory defines the way the autonomic nervous system reacts to experiences and regulates responses. It describes the way the autonomic nervous system takes in information. Did you hear this, you guys? The autonomic nervous system takes in information and initiates a response to help us safely navigate the ordinary demands of a day, along with the extraordinary challenges we sometimes face. Notice it says the autonomic nervous system. It didn't say your prefrontal cortex. It didn't say the thinking part of your brain. It didn't say none of that. And then it outlines a hierarchy of 3 biological pathways of response, providing a map of the ways we predictably move in and out of engagement, mobilization, collapse, in response to daily experiences. And this has to go with emotional sobriety too, you guys. This is at the core. And so what we keep thinking that emotional sobriety has so much command over our lives, it's not. It's the autonomic nervous system. And that's the part of the polyvagal theory that they're just coming out with. This study and research was done by Stephen Porges. And the stories about the self, the world, and relationships are based on the autonomic state. And so what happens is, you guys, is that the autonomic nervous system looks for context, choice, and connection in order to find safety and regulation. When one of these is missing, a sense of unease develops and the autonomic nervous system prepares for protection. Explicitly attending to context, choice, and connection is important to the success of the therapy process. What we need to understand is, you guys, is that it's not actually emotional sobriety. That's at the core of what we need to do. We actually need to do some more research. This is information and education, you guys. This is not like something that I can just spit off the top of my head. How I got here with this research is when I was learning how to fight my liver cancer. And so that's the reason why I went into deeper studies, because in actuality, I wanted to find the pathogenesis of the liver cancer in my life. And so if it hadn't been for Veronique Mead's chronic illness and trauma studies and her fact sheets on autoimmune and on all the chronic illnesses that happens when we're dysregulated at birth, I wouldn't have never been even got here. We wouldn't be sitting here and talking. My idea today, you guys, is to give you guys the information that you need to have in order to defend yourself against the white body culture that's creating all the norms and all the policies and procedures and laws out there, so you can learn how to take care of yourselves. In actuality, to learn how to take care of your families, because in essence, the domestication and the dream of the planet has got us messed up. And so as the context of this, if clients don't often ask why the therapist is doing something in certain ways, and therapists don't always think to offer that information. By providing information about why, what, and how, therapists are giving the context of the autonomic nervous system, needs to feel safe and engaged in the therapeutic process. So if they don't inform you about this stuff, then how are you going to get well? Why would they just want to keep the information to themselves? Why do they need to educate us about this if they wanted to keep us safe in the beginning? So in essence, what happens is, you guys, we've been set up to self-medicate ourselves. So that's the reason why we get trapped into this whole world of addiction. It's because we keep trying to self-medicate ourselves for all the external stressors that we run into in our life on a daily basis. We have stress, we have chronic stress. And then we have the 3 realms of ACEs. When you're living in a household and somebody in the household is messed up, guess what? That trickles down on it. That impacts everybody in the house, every single person in the house. How many times did your mom reach out and hug you and love on you? Can you remember that? Or how many times did your mom just actually take you off by yourself and be able to do something private and personal with you? They usually couldn't, because they didn't have the information, nor did they have the money to be able to afford to do that. And the reason for that is because they wasn't getting paid right. Another reason for that is because of the poor food. So guess what? If you put AM, PM gas in your bins, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have a messed up motor. Did that make sense to anybody in here that like their cars? You just don't put AM, PM gas in your car, do you, Philip? You know, you go get some Chevron with Tectron in it. You know what I mean? And so this information I'm giving you guys is because I've been there and I've done that, and I suffered for it. And so what I'm fighting right now is this chronic illness that I have, and these 3 autoimmune disorders. And through the polyvagal theory and understanding the ventral vagal states, then you can start looking at ways to be able to co-regulate ourselves and increase our neuroception, and actually to strengthen all of these 5 areas that I just mentioned to you earlier, that adversity and trauma weigh in on in our lives. And so in order for us to understand this emotional sobriety here, when it talks about this, I want you guys to really look at this and do a little homework on your own and research what the polyvagal theory is and research what co-regulation is, because you guys are actually the teachers that need to be out there in the community to let people know that if alcohol and drugs was the answer, then what was the question? And the question is our autonomic nervous system. It works unconsciously. You don't even know it's operating, Philip or Jasmine or Karen. It's the thing that protects us from society. So just think about that. They call it actually our homeland security, autonomic nervous system. More about the polyvagal theory. Choice. When choice is restricted or when there's a feeling of being trapped, the autonomic nervous system senses danger and acts as a survival response. Where to sit, proximity, focus of the session, modality to use, and pace of work are examples of choices therapists can routinely offer. So it's the autonomic nervous system that senses the danger and it acts as survival response. It didn't say anything about your thinking had anything to do with that, you guys. So the more that you know about your autonomic nervous system and what it does and how it functions, it's going to help depict how you can manage and control and change your behaviors and open your thinking. And the connection, the therapist's ability to be in ventral vagal regulation, offer that regulating energy to its clients is key to success of therapy. So that's the reason why. Do you have the stress cycle, this infographic here?
I can post that one up as well in the chat.
So it's the stress cycle, Kelby, and it talks about rest and digest. When we're parasympathetic, then we're receiving oxytocin and serotonin. And then in genetics, it says anything can be a tiger. Genetics and the experience inform how we detect danger and threat. Did you hear what I said? It's genetics and life experience informs how how we detect danger and threat. And people with highly attuned neural sections sense danger more often than others. So Jasmine, I don't know if you've experienced this or you, Philip, or Kelby or Karen, but I think that at certain times in your life that neural section might have been that small voice in your head that told you not to do it, or told you not to do something, and you didn't do it. And you said, damn, man, I should listen to that little voice. You know what I mean? And the reason why we don't listen to the small voice is because we haven't been attuned to learning to listen to the small voice. And so it talks about when we're in a state of trigger or danger, then it's adrenaline, cortisol, and we're in fight or flight. And then when we're getting freeze and fawn, that's a part of the ventral vagal. That's where that's part of our dorsal vagal, I mean. That's when our parasympathetic joins up and we get into the freeze mode. That means that we're at the top of the apex up here, that there's fight and flight and there's rest and digest. But in the dorsal vagal part of the ventral vagus system, it's when we actually get into the freeze, and that means to faint. So in the wild, I don't know if you've seen this before, but you've probably seen some movies where a tiger or leopard goes and chases down, like say, God, I don't know what type of animals they have out there in the wild, but like an impala. And so when they capture the impala, you know, after they ran up and catch them, you know, then what happens is the impala just faints. And so now the tiger or the leopard thinks that this particular animal is dead, but guess what? It's just in the freeze mode. So after the tiger then went and then laid down and kind of just trying to relax, you know, because now they thought they've killed the impala. Guess what? They look off and they turn back around and the impala is gone. And that's because their body is shut down. So when we enter our dorsal vagal state, our body shuts down, you guys, and it doesn't have a consciousness or nothing. It's just in a freeze state, a faint state. So this infographic that I'm having Melissa give you guys is a stress cycle, and it's called the stress cycle. And it takes you from safe and social to trigger and danger to mobilization and immobilization. And immobilization, the burst of the dorsal vagus activation. Mobilization is the burst of the sympathetic activation. And that's it, to be able to escape the tiger. And so the subconscious processes and how can I survive? Authentic connection, fight, flight avoidance, fight, face the threat, fawn, fake and pretend, freeze, numb, disassociate, and flop and collapse. And that's part of the subconscious processing for the freeze state. Any questions from anybody?
I was just going to read, Alfred, some of the comments that had come in through the chat from the last, 30 minutes or so. Kelby had shared that regarding her ACE score, she's also a 4+ like you are in that 12%. And she shared it's what led her to the mental health profession. And she constantly has to balance her experiences and biases from a personal level and be an advocate for her own resilience. Being with others in the journey is reassuring. And then Feather also shared pretty high on the ACE. She thinks 7, and been in therapy weekly, hoping to help herself. And then we had Kelby also mentioning she really appreciates and enjoys learning about the physiology of our being. And then also mentioning conscious discipline, which we use with the preschoolers I work with, that a conscious discipline mentor discussed that rage or adrenaline lands in our muscles and needs movement, and anger and stress lands in the stomach and needs calming or soothing. So kind of those different ways in regards to what you're talking about with the stress cycle. And then I did create a Google Drive file just so everyone knows, where we have the, I'll start uploading the infographics there as well. And then the links that I've dropped in the chat will be both in that Google Drive and in our Facebook group for everybody to be able to access.
So you guys, it's hard to really do the emotional sobriety book study when you're in my realm, because I know a little bit too much, because and fighting for my life over here. And I want you guys not to experience what I'm experiencing, because as Kelby talks about, what I'm experiencing right now is challenges in my muscles and challenges in my gut on a daily basis. Every morning when I wake up, it's contingent upon how nauseous my stomach can get in the morning, and how that fluctuates throughout the day. And that's through stomach acid, and that's through trauma and adversity, and it's through epigenetics, and it's in our bodies. And in actuality, we was born with it, you guys. So if you're trying to think that you can alleviate this out of your bodies, once you got it in your bodies, all you can do is manage it. And you can only way you can manage it is through attuning to your physiology. And one of the ways is yoga, and another of the ways is nutrition. And like it says, balance, engaging the ventral vagus nerve, is breathing, it's conscious breathing, it's guided meditation, appreciating nature, meaning taking long walks, bilateral stimulation, bilateral beats, petting something soft, hugs, cuddles, creative or spiritual activities. So look at your life and look at what you're doing. And then look at the last chapter down here, not chapter, but paragraph on page 4. It says, what happens when home is scary, when the family we are growing up in becomes a source of ongoing stress? What about when our fight or flight apparatus gets mobilized, not because we're staring into the spear of adversity or bears lumbering towards us, but because our mother is depressed and lost in a world where we can't connect with her, or our father is on a drinking binge and hurling abuses of all kinds that reverberates around the house and throws everyone's emotional state out of whack? What if our parents are getting divorced and our lives are being turned upside down? How is our development affected? In other words, when the very place that represents home and her feels threatening. And that's the reason why, you guys, I implore you to learn about somatic experience and learn about emotional sobriety and learn how this information can better help you understand what's going on inside your own cognition and inside your own body, so you can prevent these chronic illnesses in your life and in the lives of your family members. I'm pretty sure that some of you guys have some family members that have some chronic illnesses right now. And so some of these chronic illnesses can be reversed if you take a look at this, you guys, through a different state. And so also being a therapist, you guys, you can either contact me for information, or you can sign up with me for me to help you do some work, some psychoeducational and therapy work if you like. Melissa would put the contact information up in the chat box too. As we're getting ready to come to a close, any final statements from anybody?
We had Feather share that yoga really does help and loves intentional breathing. And Kelby said thank you. She has to head out and she appreciates being part of this group. Any other thoughts folks want to unmute and share?
Yeah, so thank you again for the invite. I really enjoyed this session. I myself work here in the behavioral health field as a certified peer support worker. And so all this information is something that I've been working on myself, you know, in order to reach out and relate to others. You know, this is something that's really been helpful for me. And when I hear this and you talk about balance, I'm always reminded of what we work on in the program. And there's a specific part of what it says is strengthen the mind or strengthen the body. Let me read this. It says, work out the body to strengthen the mind, grow rich in spirit to cure emotional ills. And so that leads back to that whole meditation and working out your body, feeding it good nutrients and all that good stuff, you know, and that's something that I'm continuously working on. So I really appreciate you bringing out and I guess kind of reassuring that fact for me again. So thank you.
Yeah, and so you guys don't do like me. I used to be worried about my information, dispensing of the information, but part of our polyvagal, it impacts our our larynx, our pharynx. It actually it packs our voice, you guys. And so the polyvagal theory is a really good theory for you guys to really look at and examine, because our vagus nerves impacts everything going on in our body, from our gut to our urine. It's in all 8 major organs of our body. It runs through all that. It runs through our fibrosis. It runs from our scrotum all the way up. And actually the 10th cranial nerve comes out of our brain stem and the back of our neck, and it runs down our spinal cord. So it sends information backwards and forwards, you guys, to our brain and our body. And that's another thing that you got to realize. Why we keep going to treatment? Why they keep sending us to treatment? Why didn't they just give us the original information in the beginning? You know, and then all we would need is small software updates like they do with computers. In actuality, we've actually become the cash crop for America, you guys. When you look at it, yeah, treatment centers and educational centers, and there's some more stuff, education, finance, criminal justice, and healthcare is all the doorways that we enter through in our lives that cause us to be products of America. Does that make sense? If we got more information and we got treated right as children and the environment was fair, we wouldn't be sitting here today. Just real simple. Melissa, you want to close up for me?
Sure. I'm spilling my hot chocolate with my dog here. Yeah, so I have that Google Drive created, and you'll be able to go on there. I think I captured the infographics that we referenced, but like I said, I'll also be putting that into the Facebook group so that folks can access that information there. And you're welcome to share the Google Drive link with other folks. The polyvagal flip chart that Alfred was referencing, I was able to take some pictures of that content and also uploaded it into a file titled Polyvagal in the Google Drive, so folks can see that and go back and reference that as well. In February, we will be picking up the last Monday of the month, 9 a.m. Pacific time, just like usual. And we really encourage folks to participate within that Facebook group. And you can also check out our website if you'd like to connect with Alfred directly for further services. Yeah, so thanks everyone for being here. It was an awesome time together. Does anyone have any final questions or thoughts you want to share?
Or closing comments? Nope.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, everyone.
Be good, Jasmine. Thank you for bringing in your friend.